Welcome back to Reinvent Healthcare, the podcast for health and wellness practitioners who are passionate about making a difference. Today's episode is all about the interactions between the adrenal glands and the sex hormones. And big problem is that most practitioners who are working with people who come in complaining about hormone imbalances, sex hormone imbalances like hot flashes or PMS or dysmenorrhea, irregular periods, they are just looking at the sex hormones. And that's a big mistake. And that's a mistake I don't want you to make. So if you just look at the sex hormones in isolation, you're looking at testing estrogen, testing progesterone, testing testosterone, and then looking to see which of those are out of balance, and then looking at what bioidenticals to help people with, or what herbs and nutrients to support those. But what they're missing is the big picture of the adrenal glands and how the adrenals play into reproductive hormone health. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So I do want to remind you, if you haven't already downloaded our adrenal resource guide, you can go to reinventhealthcare.com/adrenals, and you're going to be able to download that amazing resource guide that has lots of charts and lists of herbs and things like that. Let's talk about how the adrenals interact with the sex hormones. So one thing that a lot of practitioners either aren't taught or don't remember from their medical training or health coaching training or nursing training, whatever, is that cholesterol is the starting point for making all of these hormones. And that cortisol, the adrenal, big picture adrenal hormone, that one is coming down the same pathway. Let's talk about how the Pregnenolone Steal interacts with the sex hormones and causes a situation where when someone, woman or man, is under a lot of stress, that all of the precursor from cholesterol, and I'll talk to you about what both those different steps are, but all of those precursors go down and make cortisol, because guess what? Cortisol is there to help you stay alive. Estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, those aren't so critical in a life-threatening situation. So we have at the top cholesterol. And in order for cholesterol to get down into the next step, which is pregnenolone, it has to have enough vitamin B5, pantothenic acid, in order to make that conversion. And I don't know about you, but I often see a lot of women who have high cholesterol, men too, but more so in women, high cholesterol, but then they have low steroid hormones, low testosterone, low progesterone, low estrogen. And we're like, wait a minute, if it's going down that pathway, what's happening? And even sometimes low cortisol as well. If there's not enough vitamin B5, we can't convert that cholesterol into pregnenolone. And right away, doctors are jumping in to try to put people on statins when their cholesterol's high without digging deep. I want you to be the kind of practitioner that digs deep and finds the underlying causes. So cholesterol gets converted to pregnenolone. And pregnenolone, I kind of call it the grandma of the steroid hormones. And it is going to be converted straight downstream into cortisol. Yeah, there's a couple of other steps in between, but it goes down to cortisol. So if you're under a lot of stress, a lot of that pregnenolone is going to be converted to cortisol because, face it, it's important. When I tell people, I talk to my patients about this, I say, think about grandma comes over and grandma has special treats for the grandkids. And we have one kid that's just like gets in there and takes all the treats so the other kids can't get it. That appears to be what happens a lot of times in the steroid hormone pathways. So pregnenolone will get converted downstream to cortisol. What it could be and should be doing is converting to progesterone, and then through a number of steps through to DHEA and testosterone. Those are the male hormones, the androgens. And so if we have too much of it going down to cortisol, we see low DHEA. When we talk about the testing for adrenal dysfunction, we'll talk about the role of testing DHEA and being able to figure out where in the cycle of adrenal dysfunction a person falls. If the pregnenolone gets pulled down the pathway into the naughty grandchild cortisol, because cortisol, Its job is to keep you safe, keep you alive. Then we're not going to have enough progesterone. We see this a lot. We see a lot of people with low progesterone, especially in women. If we don't have enough of the pregnenolone to go around, so to speak, if we don't have enough pregnenolone and to go into cortisol and to go into progesterone and to be going into DHEA and to make testosterone and then finally into making estrogen, we're going to have sex hormone imbalance. So we're going to include this picture that is really, really nice that you can use and have it for when you're working with people and when you're trying to explain people how important it is to get their stress under control in order to control their libido, their menstrual cycles. If they're in menopause, their symptoms of menopause, their hot flashes and moodiness and inability to sleep. And also the ability to have good periods. It also affects fertility because progesterone is such an important player in fertility. So we have to help people to get this stress under control. When we look at what happens, pregnenolone going down to an intermediate 17-hydroxypregnenolone and then into DHEA. The DHEA is it's considered an anti-aging hormone, right? So we're not getting enough of that and people are starting to feel old. That DHEA is then converted through a number of steps into testosterone. And what does testosterone help us with? Putting on lean muscle mass, sex drive. So if somebody's complaining to you that they have low sex drive or I'm going to the gym, but my muscles are still wimpy, they may not have enough testosterone, not because they need to be supplemented with testosterone, but because of the Pregnenolone Steal. And then testosterone gets converted downstream into estrogen. And estrogen, right, the aromatase enzyme comes from the testosterone. So if we have too much aromatase, then there are men who are complaining about not having enough testosterone. And then they go to the doctor and the doctor says, oh, we'll just give you some testosterone shots or testosterone cream. And they take that and their testosterone doesn't get better, but their estrogen levels go up. Instead of having increased libido and increased manliness, they find that they start to grow boobs, as we call them, man boobs. So these are important pathways to consider. When we look at how to do adrenal testing, we're going to look at the metabolites and the different stages that these hormones go through. But bottom line is, if you have somebody who's complaining about sex hormone imbalance symptoms, like I said, low libido, not being able to make good muscles, PMS, hot flashes, and other symptoms of menopause, dysmenorrhea, irregular periods or amenorrhea, missing periods, you've got to look at the adrenals. And it may not be, it's not 100% of the time, of course, going to be related to the adrenals. But if you skip that, you're skipping giving somebody a very simple lifestyle approach. Stress management, good food, great herbs and things like that you can give people. Now, we do look at bioidentical hormone replacement. So sometimes in this case, when we look at the tests, and we'll share with you how to look at the tests on the next episode, we look at giving people the highest level in that pathway so that they can make their own. So if we're looking at it, we go, well, let's give this person some pregnenolone so that they can make more DHEA, they can make more progesterone, and they can make more estrogen. That's where I like to start in the case where I see these pathways disrupted, rather than jumping in and giving somebody estrogen, because you got to be careful giving people estrogen. So here's the deal. Sex hormone imbalance is very much and intimately related to adrenal dysfunction. So you need to be approaching this person who has sex hormone imbalance symptoms from the standpoint of, let's get your cortisol levels under control. Let's test and see what your adrenals are doing. And the beauty of this is one of the tests you can do, which is the Dutch test, or also the Meridian Valley 24-hour, and I think Genova still has one. You can look at what's going on in all these different metabolites, and you can make an educated decision about where to go with this. You can make an educated decision like, oh, the sex hormones are really out of balance, but the cortisol is way out of balance. You're going to see either the cortisol is really high and it's in the process of stealing, or you're going to see the cortisol is really low, which means that the person's probably just been through the hypercortisol state and has stolen away those precursors. So bottom line is, somebody comes in with lots of sex hormone irregularities. You've got to assess their adrenals. You've got to look at their stress. You've got to look at their sleep. You've got to look at what you can do to their food to take the stressors out of the food. You've got to look at their gut, right? You got to look at what other things are going on. Do they have gut dysbiosis? Do they have an underlying viral thing like an EBV or cytomegalovirus? Are they toxic and their liver is overloaded? All of those things need to be considered with everybody that walks in the door with sex hormone imbalances. So again, download the document at reinventhealthcare.com/adrenals. You're going to have lots of resources in there for helping people to support their adrenals. And take a look at the show notes page. And there you're going to see this chart that has, beautifully laid out. And I recommend that you print that chart out, keep it on your desk, and keep it handy when you're working and doing a client intake. It's a really great chart that you can actually show people to show people why we need to address their adrenals when they're complaining about sex hormone imbalances, right? You have to show them the biochemistry and explain it in a way that they'll understand. So that's the story. Sex hormones intimately connected with adrenal hormones. You have the power to take charge and really help these people to get well. A lot of times they've just been given birth control pills, or they've just been giving some hormones, or somebody that's more functional is giving them some herbs and some nutrients without looking at the adrenals. We can't look at the body in isolation. In our nutritional endocrinology practitioner training, we talk about a pyramid and we talk about the priority order to get things balanced. If you've got somebody who is a stress bunny and you're trying to address their sex hormone imbalances, good luck. It's not going to happen. We've got to look at this in hierarchical format. If you want to go deeper with all of that, go to inemethod.com and learn more about our practitioner trainings. So you have the power to take charge. Teach people about how to control their bodies. Teach people about how to get the body in the best optimal health, and you're going to be successful, even with these people who have been to other practitioners and failed. I know that in medical school, nursing school, and all the Western medicine approaches, none of this stuff is talked about. I know that because our practitioners who've gone through and graduated from our practitioner trainings have said, I wish they taught us this in medical school. I think about all the people I could have helped, and I've known this all along. So go to inemethod.com, check out what we have to offer for practitioners. Go to reinventhealthcare.com/adrenals, and you will get our resource guide. And until next time, shine on.